Welcome back for another episode of Branching Out with Sierra. What do you do when you've had multiple conversations with a team member who isn't performing? Nothing seems to be changing. You're frustrated, they seem to be stuck, and you're starting to wonder, do I continue to try and coach and guide this person, or do I begin to escalate the issue? This actually comes from a leadership scenario submitted by a listener, but is also something I hear about all the time in the organizations that I go into. Many of us feel very uncomfortable having conversations about people's performance. It's fine and it's easy when we're delivering great news and we're reinforcing positive behavior that we're seeing, but when it comes time to give someone feedback in the areas in which they can improve, we want to do so without ruining the relationship and guiding them in a way where they truly want to improve. So today's episode is entitled Turning Tough Talks into Growth Moments. Something I've been doing for a while now that I've been teaching in organizations is the GROW coaching model. It is something that I actually just taught last week to a client, and I thought, that would make a great episode. It's something that is pretty simple and makes difficult conversations feel so much more natural and easy to have, to the point where you might not even call them difficult conversations anymore. The GROW coaching model is entitled GROW because it's an acronym. And if you know me well, you know how much I love growth. And this acronym, when I first found out about this model, I knew it was a good fit for me. But it's something that I had found I had been doing so naturally all along, even when I was a teacher. As a teacher, you really are a coach. You are a guide. You are helping, whether it's a young individual or an older individual, you are helping to guide them, helping them to answer questions for themselves, to continue to grow. And I find that it's easier to do so by asking questions, not making statements. And that's why this model, I believe, works so well, is when we ask questions and we seek to understand individuals, it takes them off of the defensive. It's a lot easier to do so. So GROW stands for goal, reality, options, and way forward. So this is something that can be used in daily conversation with a team member. Recently, Erica, Director of Details, and myself were doing a presentation giving feedback about the evaluation process that was being used and how it could be improved, and ways that we could be documenting conversations over time, not really just sitting down to evaluate when it's time for that quarterly review or the annual review, but actually giving meaningful feedback all year round. Every time in the moment when you see something, whether it's complimenting it or whether it's noticing that something could be improved upon, and being able to navigate that in the moment. That was something we were talking about, and I thought it was the perfect time to bring up the GROW coaching model, which really helps me navigate my own coaching conversations with my clients, as well as something that I've taught a lot of my clients to do with their team members. I even have some clients that I force to awkwardly sit and model these coaching conversations in front of other staff members, but it is a great growth opportunity, and everyone walks away feeling more confident in their ability to have these conversations. So I started off by saying G is goal. So during this part of a coaching conversation, you are seeking to identify the goal. That's just what the person is working towards. So if we were to consider a situation I've used in the past as an example, one I even used last week, maybe a team member has not been showing up on time for work. This isn't someone who has a history of this. It's just been happening in the last couple of weeks. You've noticed that they're showing up a little later and a little later all the time, and it's not normal for them. And obviously, you want to hold them to the same standard as everyone else. I actually modeled this coaching conversation with a client. And it's funny because when you practice the conversation, she didn't know, what I was going to give feedback on or where I was taking the conversation. I just told her we were going to have one. And it can quickly become making excuses as to why a behavior is occurring, right? So when I did this, I started out by giving the feedback of what I had noticed. So, I've noticed that you've always been on time in the past, and over the last few weeks, I've noticed that you've been coming in a little bit later. So I was seeking to know and understand if something had been going on, if she needed any support with anything, if everything was okay. So I was seeking to understand what was going on, but also show that I cared about her, that I had noticed things had been good in the past, and that there was a discrepancy between what I was seeing in the past and what I'm seeing now. So let's talk about why. And I'm using that to get to the point where I can have the individual to establish their own goal. What do they believe they're working towards? So really what I'm asking is, what is our expectation when it comes to being on time here at this organization? If I were to ask that question, that's really asking, what's your goal? What are you working towards? So this individual might say, we're supposed to arrive 10 minutes before our shift begins. Okay, that's the goal. They've just identified we're supposed to arrive 10 minutes before the shift begins. Well, that might seem really obvious, but sometimes what you find when you're asking the goal and what success actually looks like is they might say something that isn't actually the goal that they should be working towards. Maybe your expectation is that they arrive 30 minutes before the shift starts. They say 10, and now you notice that the two aren't the same, and no wonder they're interpreting the rules differently and they're not showing up on time. Okay, here's the issue. So this is why it's better to ask a question and seek to understand what they're even working towards in that specific area. So you can see, is there a difference between my expectation and what they believe to be the expectation? So as you have that conversation and you figure out, okay, maybe they did know we're supposed to be arriving 30 minutes prior to work. Then I would follow that with a question. Are you aware of what time you've been arriving to work over the last few weeks? And of course you have to navigate how they respond. And some people, when I have these conversations to practice with them on being the coach side of the conversation, they try to push back and be defensive and come up with excuses and blame just to make it harder on me as the coach to model, which is fun. But I've definitely had people say, well, hold on a second. So-and-so doesn't show up on time and no one said anything to them, right? So there we go. The defensive, oh, you're just calling me out. Why are you singling me out when other people are doing the same? So when I did it in my conversation last week, I focused on how I was having individual conversations with everyone to reestablish expectations and make sure we were all on the same page. But with you, I'm just focused on what your goal is and how we can help you get there. So refocusing on the individual and how we can support them instead of, okay, blame game, or I'm going to try and distract you by what everyone else is doing, so I take the pressure off of myself. So there are going to be these little nuances that show up that you have to navigate on the spot, but obviously with practice, it becomes easier over time. So all of this is around the goal. We're just trying to figure out what are they working towards? How do they define success? And then with that, the R comes in, which is the reality. And this is where we're trying to see the difference between what they're working towards and where they are today. So that's why I immediately went into, are you aware of what time you have been showing up? Have you been paying attention to that? Have you noticed that you've had less time to prepare when you come in? Right? You can start to ask questions around that, the reality of, okay, so as you've been arriving only 10 minutes prior, how has that impacted your morning and your ability to get your day started right? What impact is it having on your day? Right? So helping the individual by questioning to realize, okay, well, I'm supposed to be here. I'm here. Now I know that that's a problem because I'm realizing, well, it has been hard to get set up before I start having calls roll in, and then I feel like I'm playing catch up all day. Or, I'm just totally making up a scenario, but you get the point. So this goal and reality piece, you might be bouncing back and forth between them as you ask questions and really kind of comparing the two. Well, where are we? When we were successful in the past, what was working for you? Why were we so successful in the past? How were you able to arrive 30 minutes early before? And in this scenario, when I ran it last week, the individual was talking about the road work going on in the area, which was a real life problem and impacting people's ability to get to work on time. So, of course, what we start kind of navigating in the questioning is, what are our options? How do we get you back to a place where you're arriving on time? That's how we move into options. So we're at GRO, and I'm kind of running a very quick scenario, and then I'll go over each one in greater detail here in a minute. So what are our options? Well, you might find that it's not very easy to get the individual to see what you see as the option. So you might immediately want them to know that what you're saying is, okay, you need to start getting up earlier, or if there's construction traffic, obviously you need to leave a little earlier. If you're sitting in construction traffic for 15 minutes, then how much earlier do we need to leave in the morning to arrive at work on time? It might sound really silly to have to ask that, right? But if you immediately say, okay, well, I just need you to start getting up earlier in the morning. Well, hold on a second. Now you're telling me what to do. That's a great way to put me immediately on the defensive. So think about that for a second. If you immediately jump in and save them and tell them what to do rather than asking questions, you can put them on the defensive, or you're just problem solving for them so there's zero buy-in. So, if we weren't using the showing up on time example, maybe it's something they've actually never been successful with in the past. Maybe it's a certain skill set that you've noticed has been a problem for a while, and, they're a newer employee and you've never seen them exhibit this skill successfully. We don't have a past instance to compliment them on to say, okay, how do we get back there? How do we get there again? You might find yourself having to navigate this conversation a little differently if that's the case. So you would have to be patient and not immediately jump to suggestions of ways that they can solve the problem or improve, but ask questions. And I will tell you, every single time that I practice this with organizations, and I have folks sit and observe two people having this conversation, the natural instinct is, if there is more than a couple second pause when you've asked a question like, what are our options? What are some ideas of ways that we can solve this problem? If there is a pause there and there is silence, it is just awkward enough for the person in the coaching role, leader as coach, to pop in, okay, here's my solution, right? To make that a less uncomfortable moment, I'm just going to throw out there my idea. And that creates a lot of problems. So everything that you've done up until that point to build trust, to show that you care, to show that you're coming alongside them, you're trying to help them, now you've either put them on the defensive or you've just saved them from having to do any of the work, and now they're not bought into the solution. If it's their idea, if the solution to the problem is their idea, one, they're more likely to follow through with it. Two, they're less likely to be defensive, and they're just going to feel more comfortable approaching it rather than you telling them what to do. So this is why I'm spending so much time on this piece, the options piece, because it is where I see most people find that they're not being successful in a coaching conversation the first, second, third, fourth, fifth time they're having them, because they jump in. And it happened in the example last week. Immediately there was this moment of silence, and then it was, well, how about we do this? How about this? This is a good option. What do you think about this? Try really hard not to do that. Try not to jump in and save them. And you going into the conversation may already have exactly in your head what you want that person to do. You know what the solution is. If it were you, this is what you would do to solve the problem. And what I will say is your goal for the conversation is to be able to control yourself enough to not share that idea. Now, is there a way that you can specifically question that helps them to arrive at that idea? Yes, that is totally possible. And it happens a lot. Based on your line of questioning, you might guide them to finding that one thing that you wanted them to do anyway. But again, it came out of their mouth first, not yours. So it's a completely different scenario. So keep that in mind as you go to have a conversation like this. Really put a lot of emphasis on waiting and being patient and really exploring all the options, not just one. Don't stop at one. But ask, what are our options? What are a couple of solutions to this challenge? What could we do? Another thing is, well, what resources would you need to be able to be successful with that? So I'm going to say this joking, but like, do they need a new alarm clock? Is their phone not working to wake them up in the morning? Or do we need to work together to create a new morning routine for you? Like, you probably don't want to have to do that with the individual, but maybe that's the idea. Is they say, the support or resource I will need is I need help like getting my morning to work out. I have kids I got to get ready for school and I'm having trouble getting up in the morning. They might express their specific challenges that are happening at home, and maybe express that they need help with that. And again, you are coming alongside them to support them as a coach. And so the idea is, if they're requesting resources, we're going to try to the best of our ability to give them the support they need. That's in that, showing up late scenario. But in other scenarios, when it comes to a skill set, when you're asking about resources, it might be a specific software or tool that they need access to help them. I know recently a client had expressed that someone on the team was having a lot of issues with spelling. And it had been a problem over and over again, and it was a problem with clients, and then they started to see it with some other people on the team. And so as a team, we decided that we were going to use the tool of Grammarly, and we were going to make sure that our spelling was checked, our grammar was checked, and this is our new system we've put in place. So this is a great tool that, maybe this individual needs access to. So thinking about whether it's, software kind of resource, a human resource, what resources might this person need to be successful, and asking them that and giving them the time to really think about what they need in order to reach the goal based on what their reality is at this time. So the W I mentioned is way forward. So way forward is exactly what you're thinking. What is the way forward? Okay, how do we proceed? This is another place where we rush it. We want the conversation to be over. It's been difficult up until this point. And a lot of times, this is where people try to gloss over everything that all the progress that they just made. They try to end the conversation early and say, okay, well, it's not a big deal. I know we'll get to the bottom of it. Thanks for chatting today. And you want to close it up quickly, but it's really negating the importance of the issue you just talked about. So the way forward, you want to spend a good amount of time on. You're going to ask a lot of questions. And at this point, you're identifying what are the next steps. So where do we go from here? You can literally ask that question. These don't have to be extremely formal questions. So where do we go from here? We've stated this is where you want to be. This is where we are today. We've outlined all of these different options and what impact they could have on the challenge that you're facing. So where do we go from here? And again, you're asking that question, allowing them to consider, okay, based on the options at hand, this is the one that seems most accessible to me. This is a good starting point. Well, guess what? If what you had identified in your mind as the way forward does not align with what they've identified as the way forward, it's okay. A lot of people say, well, what if the thing that they want to do isn't the right thing, the one I would have chosen? It's okay. You can navigate that conversation, but you're allowing them the opportunity to think through what they would like to do. So they're going to implement this solution. Okay. All right, so there are a couple things to explore here. Have you considered also trying this strategy, and what impact could it have? Could we do both of them together? Might that work? Right? You can really still talk about it. It's kind of joining options and way forward. But what has to be decided before the end of the conversation is what follow-up has to occur. So something that I really like to do during the way forward is to ask the individual about when they'd like to follow up about it. So in the example that I was providing about, arriving to work late, when would you like me to follow up with you and see how things are going with this? So maybe they say, maybe in a month. Well, maybe I wanted to follow up within the next week, or maybe I want to see that they've arrived on time the next day. So again, there might be a difference between what you envisioned and what they said, but there's a lot of information that comes from that when you ask these questions and they tell you what they want and how they want to proceed. And you could say, well, I think that's a great idea. I would love to follow up a month from now, but I really hope that we can start to see changes sooner than that. What would it look like for me to check in on you tomorrow morning and see how this works for you? Just so if this strategy isn't going to work, we can go ahead and explore some other options, and we don't wait an entire month and then find that this didn't work, and then it's already next month and we're just starting a new solution when we could be starting a new solution on day 2. So you can still frame it as a question. What would it look like if? And you're allowing them the opportunity to brainstorm with you and really problem solve with you. I really do feel like the defenses, the wall comes down a little bit. The other thing is with the follow-up, I will even ask, if I notice that this continues to be a challenge, how would you like me to approach you about it? Or what would you like me to say? Well, here's another thing. People get on the defensive because of your tone of voice or what you're saying to them. But if you have literally asked them when you want me to follow up and how you want me to follow up, what do you want me to say to you? What's a good thing that's going to get your attention and make you feel comfortable talking about this again? Hey, guess what? They're telling you what they need from you and what they want you to say. So when it comes down to it and you go to them and you say that thing, you've done everything in your power to approach this in the way that best fits their needs, right? There's only so much that you can do. So I am that explicit in the conversation too, as far as if I notice that this isn't working, how would you like me to approach that? What would you like me to say? I make sure we set a timeline for frequency of follow-up. And is the follow-up by email or is it in person? If I walk by and I notice a person doing this thing that we're talking about, how would you like me to handle that? Would you like me to pull you aside in the moment? Would you prefer that I send you an email? Would you like me to approach you at the end of the day so we can reflect on it privately? Answer all those questions together so that when you walk away from this conversation, you have all the information you need to help them be successful in reaching the goal. And I think it makes going forward so much easier. You're also documenting all of this after the fact. So you're going back and wherever you document, you are going to jot down what the goal was, what they said the reality was, the options that were identified, and how you chose to move forward. And you're going to put reminders on your calendar about the follow-up, because a lot of times we have the conversation, we have the best of intentions, and then things get busy. You have other fires that come up that you have to put out, and you've forgotten. You didn't follow through with the time you said that you were going to follow up. So what do you think that might do to your the trust in the relationship, the credibility, your own follow through, right? So a lot of what you just worked on in the conversation is lost because you didn't follow through on your part. So why would they follow through on theirs? That's what I always think about. So I would say in that moment when you're documenting, you're putting it in your calendar that I'm going to check in with so-and-so at this date, time. This is the behavior that I'm looking for. We've already agreed upon it. This is what I need to be able to see. So as you can see from start to finish, goal, reality, options, way forward, it's pretty clear. Yes, there are exact questions you can ask. And certainly you could memorize them, but I find that because you can't really predict what the other person's going to say, what they're going to offer up in the conversation, it's not really that helpful to memorize a list of questions related to this. It's more helpful to follow it as a framework and consider, am I focused first on where we're headed? Am I now clear on where we are right now so they can see the difference between the two? Are we on the same page about what options we have? Do we have plenty of options? Do we understand the pros and cons of each and which one we might want to start with? And then are we both clear in a way forward? And what happens if a week from now nothing has changed? What's the next step? You can ask that too. Right? So these conversations do get a lot easier over time. They weren't easy for me to have in the beginning. I would definitely say I avoided a lot of difficult conversations. I almost would not call them difficult conversations anymore. They're just coaching conversations, and it's kind of what I do for a living. So I would hope that I've gotten better at them and more comfortable facilitating those conversations. But I encourage you to try it out. Find something that, maybe you've been avoiding a conversation about, something you've noticed. You really do want to support this person and help them to be successful, but you haven't been sure how to bring it up. As you might have guessed, if you're a frequent listener, this is going to be the branching out challenge for this week. I want you to identify that conversation you've been avoiding and consider how you might use this GROW coaching framework to facilitate a conversation. If you do that, I would love to hear from you. I want to hear how it worked, what went well. Did you jump in too early with solutions because you couldn't stand having a little bit of silence and wait time? I got a lot of practice with that as a teacher, where I would just wait and wait. It's okay. I've got all day. Until you get what you need out of the conversation. So let us know. You can shoot us an email at info@branchingoutpodcast.com and let us know how the conversation went for you. And if it didn't go well the first time, that's okay. I will be happy to help you navigate a future conversation. I'd be happy to have one with you, and we can practice it. We can model it together so that you can get comfortable with it. I do want to hear from you and know that the things that you're hearing in these episodes are things that you are able to turn around and implement and try out in your personal life and in your business. Yes, this works in your personal life too. You're certainly welcome to use them for difficult conversations. I mean, even if it's a friendship, a relationship, and, defining success of the relationship or friendship, what are we working towards? And, how are you feeling about it right now? How can we improve it? You're still following that same exact framework. So that's why I say these leadership principles do really apply to everyday life, not just work. So be sure to consider other ideas of conversations you've been avoiding, and don't just automatically apply it to the workplace. You can use it anywhere. So that is the branching out challenge for this week. And this entire episode was based off of Leadership Unscripted, where listeners submit challenges and we're able to unpack them. I just went into greater detail this time because I know that this is a challenge that comes up all the time. We don't know how to navigate it when we need to hold someone accountable. They're not living up to their potential, what we know they're capable of, and we want to be able to give them feedback and support them in a way that they can truly grow through it. So thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Branching Out with Sierra. I hope you found value in today's episode. I know it's shorter than usual, but I feel like it can be really impactful if you're able to turn around and use this. As I mentioned, I would love to hear from you, whether it's a submission as a listener about the Branching Out Challenge, or if you have any other feedback of how we can improve the podcast to better fit your needs. Be sure to share this episode with anyone you feel may benefit from it. Remember, a new episode drops every Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time, so you can certainly subscribe or follow so you're getting those notifications. Thank you so much for joining us today and listening in, and until next time, keep branching out.